Hi and welcome to our training video. If you have never conducted an OS seller file before or have you been doing them for quite some time, there are some very key components that we need you to understand in order to service this file properly. That starts with your signing confirmation, which on a signing confirmation you're going to see the seller's name and any special instructions. You're going to definitely have to check your signing confirmation every time. These are instructions that were put in throughout the file's creation, so you just want to make sure you're always consulting this signing confirmation. You will also want to look at Unlimited Ink's confirmation, which may have information that came after the order was put in and already processed. The next document that you'll usually see in your stack is the settlement statement for OS National. So what you want to make sure here is that you keep a couple of things in mind. If you ever need to communicate with us or anyone at Title about your signing, you will need your file number. This is also the escrow number for the seller transaction. Then you will also need to keep in mind your disbursement date. This is the date that the file is planning to close and they will send the seller any proceeds. So you need to make sure that your file is returned by this date to OS National by 9:30 a.m. If you're shipping from out of state, you need to make sure that it is on a FedEx truck or UPS truck, depending on which label you've been given, so that it will arrive by 10:30 a.m. once you ship. Couple of items that you need to be aware of also is that settlement statements can change. So if a signer is not happy with their settlement statement, you should refer to your notary instructions and let them know that this can be signed electronically, although you do want to give Unlimited Ink a call, as well as trying to call OS National to reach your escrow officer, for which again you will need your file number when you call in. For your most important task on the settlement statement here is pointing out once the sale has been done, they'll see their credit up here for how much the house was sold for, and then due to seller, you want to follow this line from the middle of the page to the left, and in the debit column you will see how much the seller is getting back in proceeds. This is what they are expecting to get back. That number can vary slightly. Sometimes they'll need to review their settlement statement. It's very important that you give them the time to go over each line item if they should choose, just to make sure that they're in the okay with signing the settlement statement. And then we do like to have the first page of the settlement statement initialed. The signer here is listed as John Doe, so you would draw a little X with a little line and have John Doe write JD on the settlement statement here. The next thing that we want to talk about is on the settlement statement is you sign on the next page. In Arizona, if a person doesn't sign their name exactly as it's listed on the line, that's okay, as long as it's their legal signature, so whatever matches their ID. However, if you can actually read the name, they will need to sign exactly as they're listed. Generally, we tell the notaries to start out by having them sign their book so you can assess their signature and then go from there. You should never force a signer to sign any way than they feel comfortable signing, especially if you aren't able to read the signature in the first place. OS National has a document that follows their settlement statement called Acknowledgement and Receipt of the Settlement Statement / Closing Disclosure. So one thing that you need to know about this document is it's simply a receipt. I usually make a little joke that says, okay, you've signed the settlement statement, now you sign a receipt for the settlement statement, and you have them sign along the line here. There's also an additional copy that has been signed off on by an Opendoor representative. That is just for proof that Opendoor has already reviewed that settlement statement. Now, warranty deeds can be a little tricky for people selling a home, so we just wanted to highlight some information here to make sure that notaries understand. One of the biggest questions we get is for the consideration of $10 here, and people saying, I'm not selling my home for $10, and that's absolutely true. They are not selling their home for $10. the $10 consideration is the recording fee to record the warranty deed. Another thing is that the seller's forwarding address may appear here as the grantor, and signers will want to change it. However, they do not record this document based on the mailing address or the forwarding address. They record off the legal description of the property, which is on Exhibit A. Okay, so if you ever have a signer that says that's not my address here in this box, that's perfectly fine. You want to make sure that they're looking for the legal description of the property below. And just so you know, a legal description of the property can be attached at the time of recording. For the warranty deed, it's very important that you execute this properly. This is a recorded document, so you want to make sure you put your state and county. You will make sure to want to put the correct date. You want to check your phone before every signing. And then notary should be knowing how to sign their notary signature. It is preferred that notary sign with comma Notary Public after their name. Another thing that notaries miss on these documents is their commission expiration date. You want to make sure you write in your expiration date. And another thing that is missed is you want to make sure that you put your notary stamp in the proper place. The proper place would be right up beside where it says notary seal, trying not to go over the edge here. Do not ever stamp your notary seal over the word notary seal. Make sure to put it right here to where it doesn't go off the page. Do not stamp above the notary block beside the signer's signature. You need to stay below and make your stamp fit right here along the border. If you stamp over the word notary seal, it may cause the document not to be recorded. Another document that we have here in the OS file that's a little bit different from other companies is the 1099-S reporting form. You do want to make sure that you are always capturing the seller's forwarding address underneath their name in this first box. You also want to make sure that you are capturing their social security number in the next box. If these are not printed here for you, you must have the signer fill them in. The gross proceeds are always filled out here, but you need to make sure the signer fills out the allocation of the gross proceeds. If you have one signer, it's generally 100% of the gross proceeds go to them. But if you have two signers, it may be 50-50, or one of them may have 50 and one of them may have 100 and the other have 0. They need to decide where that's going. And then, of course, you always have them sign in the center of the page here. Make sure if you have blank documents within your file, you do not remove them. I know it's a pain to have those in there, but they're in there for a reason. So do not remove blank pages, especially if you're doing scan backs, because we often count the pages that we receive against how many pages are scanned back, and it can cause delays. So just print your file as is, and if it's a blank page, just leave it in there as it is. The next document we're coming to is a seller's affidavit. Now, we get these back and they're not always executed properly. The first thing is that this affidavit here, you're going to need to make sure that the signer fills out if they have any HOA information here. They have a selection of no HOA, if they have a 1 or 2 HOAs. And they do need to include the address of that HOA. So once they give you the name, you can look it up. Another way is to refer back to the settlement statement, and you can see if they have any HOAs due on their settlement statement. It will tell you who they are. So we have to make sure we fill in this portion here. The next thing is on item 11, you always need to make sure that the social security number is printed properly here, or if it's not printed at all, that it's entered. And they must add their seller's forwarding address here. Okay, this document is very important. And then we want to make sure that they sign properly down at the bottom, and then you notarize. If you are signing in a different state or county, you need to make sure that you cross one line through the state, write your state and initial it, and also cross one line through the county, initial it, and sign. There will be a printed version of this already filled out so you can see how this is done. You do not want to stamp near the word notary seal. I usually place my stamp right below where it says commission expires because I have plenty of room. And you want to make sure you fill in this information appropriately. So this would be the, I'm just going to give it an arbitrary date, the first day of January 2019 by John Doe, who either check or X the box, has produced a driver's license as an identification. I would sign my name, comma, Notary Public, print my name, comma, Notary Public, and write my commission expiration date here. The next document in the stack is a privacy statement. All privacy statements explain to the sellers or buyers where their information is shared. I generally present this document and say, this is the privacy statement for OS National. They're not going to be sharing your information with anybody unless it makes the transaction happen. And then I have them sign off on it. And then this is your non-foreign status certification. This document, you have to be very careful how you administer this. This does not mean that they're a U.S. citizen. You do not have to be a U.S. citizen to convey property. However, a non-foreign status certification ensures that the seller has the proper tax identification number to convey real estate in the U.S. So they need to make sure that they check their social or their tax ID number here, because you do not have to be a U.S. citizen to have a tax ID number. You also want to make sure that their forwarding address is filled in properly here. If it is printed incorrectly, you can also have them one line through it, initial it, and write the correction. This is set up as if you had two signers. So if you only have one, you're only using items 2 and 3, and if you have two signers, you would be using 2 through 5, and then you're going to have them sign. It does not matter what this date is printed on here. This is not a recorded document, and it doesn't pertain to the recording of the warranty deed or the settlement statement, so whatever date is listed here is just fine. The next document we're coming to is your correction agreement and limited power of attorney. With a correction agreement and limited power of attorney, it allows title to make minor corrections to the document, such as the spelling of their name throughout the documents, legal description of the property, or even the street address. They cannot change any figures without their signature, and they cannot sign their name for them. So they would need to sign this correction agreement, and then this is notarized, following the same principles of making sure the venue and state are correct, as well as the date, who appeared before you, and what type of identification they produced. Then you sign your name. It is always preferred that notaries sign their name, comma, Notary Public, printed, and then they print their name. That's not a preference. You actually have to fill out this form, the information below. You print your name, comma, Notary Public, and sign with your commission expiration date here. And then I would stamp right below there here. Now, one of the biggest problems we have with OS National is getting back documents with the incorrect disbursement of proceeds. So I'm going to take a minute here to make sure you understand how this is filled out. So when the seller is getting back money, they are going to use the first page of the disbursement of proceeds form. They're either going to check for a check or wire all funds directly to them. That's if they're getting this proceeds to themselves, and only to themselves. Then they would sign the first page. They still need to sign the second page, which is for split proceeds, and you can have them put one diagonal line through it and initial it just to void out that page, but they still need to sign. But let's say they are splitting the proceeds. So we would have them sign this page, one line through, initial it, and use the second page. They would fill in how much is going to them and how much is going to the other party. If this is a husband and wife splitting the proceeds, or a brother and a brother, or they could be sending money to a title or an escrow company or attorney, then they would use this second portion down here. Now, one thing that you need to be conscientious of is the name on the account has to be the name the way it appears exactly on the checking account. They can't write Bob's checking or Julia's checking account. It has to be the name as it appears on their checks for their bank account. Another thing that you need to look out for is making sure that you read back the account number and routing number to them. They may hand you a piece of paper. You're not to write any of this information in. Couple of other notations that all notaries should know, not just for our files, but for all files nationwide with all companies. Number one, if a seller is closing as an individual, which John Doe is closing as an individual, the proceeds must go to John Doe. If it was John and Jane Doe, it could go to either one of them as long as both of them sign this disbursement form. If John was closing in a business and this was an LLC, all of the money must go to the LLC. After it reaches the business, they can do whatever they want to it, but the title company will not send the money anywhere else but a business account. Same thing for a trust. If it is a trust account for OS National, if they're closing in a trust, they must absolutely send the money to the trust. They cannot send the money anywhere else. Okay? And then the next form that we're coming to here is your disclosure statement regarding notary services. You may see different names typed in here. Most likely you'll see Unlimited Ink Notary. That's fine. You're a representative of the company per our contract that you sign when you take the order. You're just going to have them sign and date. This form, the disclosure regarding notary services, it just lets them know that you're a third party, that you do not work for OS National or Open Door, that you're just there to administer the documents and return them safely back to title. The last form that we're coming to here is the notary identification statement. This must be filled out in entirety. One big question we get is, do I have to put my notary seal here? And the answer is no. You do not have to put your notary seal there. However, you do need to at least write your notary information over here. So that would include your commission number and your expiration date and the name as it appears on the stamp, as well as sign, print, and your commission expires. This goes on record as who the notary was, so this information is important. You also do need to include your insurance company's name, your policy number, and expiration date. If you do not fill out this portion, you will not be paid for the file. There will be no correction on it. So you have to make sure you fill out that information, as well as the signer's ID information here. All right. I hope you enjoy doing your OS files. They are usually pretty easy to do. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at contact@unlimitedinknotary.com or on our notary line at 929-274-4648. Another thing that I want to make sure is that everyone understands that OS National requires absolutely perfectly printed documents. They should be printed the way they come to you. If you do not have a dual tray printer, if you're printing mobily, they must be printed on all legal size paper so that nothing is cut off. They cannot use letter size paper, so you want to make sure you print either as it comes or print all legal. And then make sure that there are no vertical lines or lines from your printer or speckles that can keep them from recording. So if there are anything that prevents it from recording, the notary does forfeit the notary fee per our contract. So you do want to make sure that we are perfectly clearly printed. If you have any speckles or lines or anything, you need to contact someone. Check your file first that you're printing from. It should look just the same way. You can tell very easily if it's from your scanner or printer versus if it's from that file that was sent to you. Thank you so much and have great signings.